Welcome to The Virtual Shift, a show looking at the seismic changes happening in healthcare with virtual care at the epicenter. Join me and my guests as we look at key cultural and policy shifts impacting how providers, payers, and patients connect, as well as how care is being reimagined both for today and the future. Hello, and thanks for tuning in today. I'm your host, Tom Foley. You can learn more about this show by visiting the program on healthcarenowradio.com, and be sure to follow me on LinkedIn, Twitter at FoleyTom, and the hashtag The Virtual Shift. Today we have a very special guest, Dr. Ben Park. He's the president and CEO of Vocare. Welcome, Dr. Parks.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. Good to see you.
Awesome. Same here. So, and thanks for joining the show. Very much appreciate it. So, Dr. Parks, Vocare just recently got FDA approval, as I understand it, for their medical device. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Vocare, and then we'll get into the Vitals 360 medical device.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Vocare is a 12-year-old company that back in 2010, 2011, started with the development of a tablet that was running the Linux operating system and had a bunch of devices, Bluetooth or connected to it directly. It was really a tablet before there were tablets. And the device ended up being pretty expensive. It was about $4,000 with all the components. And, you know, it ended up being cumbersome with all of the connected devices. So we sold about 4,000 of those and then shut it down. Spent the next couple of years just looking and trying to decide what we were going to do. And then the last 4 years developing an Android phone with integrated devices. And we got FDA clearance in May, and our first patent was issued in June. So it's been an exciting year for us.
Awesome. Tell us a little bit about what vitals are captured on the Vitals 360.
Sure. It's we get blood pressure, pulse, respiratory rate, oxygen, temperature, ECG, and weight with a Bluetooth scale. The scale is the only thing that's not integrated into the phone, and it would have required you to stand one-legged on the device on the floor or something. Put your
smartphone on the floor and stand on it for a minute.
Yeah. So we had to do for FDA, we had to do a purpose-built Bluetooth interface. We can't expose Bluetooth to the wild because the FDA thought it was a security risk.
Interesting. And that's what I love about the Vitals 360 is that it's an integrated device. You mentioned what you did out of the gate back in 2009 or thereabouts, and I envisioned the computing platform and the medical devices in a backpack and having to take it with me wherever I went, and that's a little bit cumbersome. It's not what I would call frictionless in the context of having the patients feel comfortable about engaging the platform. So for those, we're on the radio, so you can't see it, but I'll encourage you to go to, what is it, VocareInc.com?
Vocare.com.
Vocare.com. So
yeah.
Go there, you'll see the device. It literally is an Android phone, and it allows you to connect different devices to it for the purposes of capturing those vitals. Is that accurate?
No, the devices are not connected to it. They're integrated in it.
That's right. That's right. All the more sweet, Dr. Parks. And again, it's about simplicity. The question of the day relative to the shift that's taking place is how do we, because we've been talking about engaging the consumer and engaging the patient, engaging the member, give it whatever title they are, it's still a person. How do we get them better engaged in healthcare? I remember back in 2010 when Meaningful Use came out and patient portals were the thing. I was a product manager of a couple patient portals. It was always about patient engagement. And we're still 12 years after high tech, and we're still talking about how do we maximize patient engagement. And how do we meet them where they are and bring simplicity to the model? Because I think it's about simplicity that changes the course of the reimagination of delivery care. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I went through this. I was, when the pandemic struck, I was running Optum Care Midwest. So we had 85 locations spread over a couple of states. And in total, at that time, we were doing about 500 telehealth visits a month. 2 months into the pandemic, we were doing 1,500 a day. And we'd fundamentally changed the paradigm of what it means to have a virtual visit. Historically, it had been used for low acuity, acute care. And we turned it on its head, we had to, and start managing chronic conditions using telehealth. But what we quickly learned is that having a reliable set of vital signs made all the difference in how effective that visit was.
And that's really the key as well. We talk about telehealth and the home becoming the setting of care. And I think the market is getting a little distracted to some degree in that if they got telehealth, you can do value-based care. So I always challenge what is the definition of telehealth versus virtual care, and ultimately what does that home look like? So when I talk about telehealth, I think video and asynchronous engagement. But when I think about Vocare and the Vitals 360 device, I think about the ability to do a remote examination. I think about it's just as if you were in the office, because what happens when you walk into the brick and mortar? Step on the scale. Let me measure your blood pressure. Let me take your pulse ox. Let me do an examination, and you can get that same experience using the Vitals 360. Would you say?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's very much the direction that we see things going. And if you look at we have really 4 core use cases that we need to execute on. And those are, specifically vital signs capture. We believe that the device we know the device can be used to take vitals in the hospital, in clinics, and on home health visits. So vital signs capture is sort of a core component of what we do. And then building on that is hospital at home, remote monitoring, remote care. All those are 4 use cases that we have focused on the most.
Awesome. Yeah. So that is the natural extension, right? So I've gone from self-monitoring using your device. I can now do a remote examination using the Vitals 360. And now I can extend into remote patient monitoring from self-monitoring, remote patient monitoring. The difference there is that obviously you have a clinical team back from your associated with your primary care that is ultimately watching, if you will, monitoring your vitals and engaging you accordingly to ultimately ensure that you are on your care plan. Your care plan is in fact, at least an element of this, is taking 16 different measures in a given month from a regulatory perspective as to how to get reimbursed for remote patient monitoring. Accurate in your opinion?
Yep, absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
So, this is again where simplicity starts to come into play. I don't have to always go to the brick and mortar. I'm not a virtual only type of person, if you will, thinking that virtual care and the home is the absolute 100% way of delivering care. I think when I talk about virtual care, it's how do we extend appropriately the delivery of care from the brick and mortar into the home, and how do we leverage the home to increase value, decrease costs? Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I can give you a really good example from my own practice. I was practicing medicine too up until May when I went to work for Vocare, and I can remember one day I had this telehealth visit scheduled for the guy with hypertension, and I asked him, I said, "Where are you anyway?" He says, "Oh, I'm in the shop trailer at the job site." I said, "Oh, that's cool." He goes, "Yeah, you have no idea." He says, "I can take a 15-minute break, come in here, do my hypertension visit, and be back at work." He said, I used to have to almost take a day off work to come see you."
Exactly. That is the beauty of virtual care. You can it's healthcare anywhere. And if we learned anything in this pandemic, whether it's healthcare or not, we learned that we can operate remote. in many different facets. And, and it did wake up the market on that, virtual care works. Mikey liked it. Doctors liked it. The patients liked it. And if you remember that commercial long ago, that is ultimately the opportunity here. So let's talk a little bit about remote patient monitoring. The doctors, not a lot of doctors actually are maybe fully aware of the opportunity here. They look at it as another medical device. I can't monitor that data. I just don't have I got 25, 30 patients a day. I don't have time to look at all this data, right? So what they don't realize is, one, it's reimbursable, and two, there are teams that they can hire, if you will, to be partnered with them and still achieve the task at hand, remote patient monitoring, and still have a financial impact on top line revenue as well as profitability of the practice. Because let's face it, there is an interest in wanting to be profitable. Not all doctors are charities. And rightfully so. And then, but most importantly, the patient is on a better path to wellness. So the point there being is remote patient monitoring is very feasible. It's supported by several reimbursement codes, and the patient, it's a better chance of the patient getting on a better path to wellness. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. And we started doing more of that, of the monitoring and more of the remote care. The other surprising thing was to me is it gave an opportunity for some physicians who would have otherwise left practice to continue practicing from home. And I think that's a huge benefit given the problems with physician workforce currently.
Yeah, that's actually a great call. So not everybody has to be, neither party has to be in the brick and mortar, is what you're saying. There's flexibility now in the system as opposed to the rigidity, if you will, that was embedded. I had to go to the office. I had to wait an hour in the waiting room, and a lot of different scenarios there. So I look at remote patient monitoring as I've said many times. The average Medicare patient with 5 chronic conditions sees 9 different doctors, and they only spend, by CMS measures, 15 hours in front of their doctor. That statistic hasn't changed in many years. The point there being is, what happens to the other 8,745 hours? That's where Vocare comes into play. And that's where companies like GenieMD come into play as we partner here. And and that's why I talk about continuous care, because it is your path to wellness is not based on your 15 hours. Your path to wellness is based on the total time of what you do in front of the doctor and what you learn, and what you do at home as a reinforcement, right? It's all about execution of the care plan. You can be a diabetic, but if you're still eating that pasta, it just doesn't help. So there is a care plan. So tell me a little bit more about where you see the home becoming the setting, a deeper seeding of the home becoming that true setting of care as almost I won't call it a default, but a de facto standard.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will start getting care at home when they come to the emergency room for some problem, or when they're discharged from the hospital. And they'll get a device and they'll go home and they'll start being monitored for the next 30, 90 days. And it will go over well. They'll like it. It'll be easy for them to use. Their physician will see that their wellness is improving. And I think that's how you get the adoption. And we're really uniquely positioned for that, because somebody can come in an emergency room and we can go in there, take their vitals with the device, ask them to pay attention, and then ask them to take their own vitals, and the teach back thing. And once that's done, we can hand them a device and they can go home and be monitored from home. And That's only because of the simplicity that we built into the device. The device doesn't need a Wi-Fi network. All of the readings are taken in a consistent fashion. There's really little to no training. We had to do usability testing as part of the FDA clearance, and it was interesting. We did a bunch of these user testing, and we took it to a custom motorcycle show, which was interesting. These guys were all gearheads, and we would hand them a device and say, explain very briefly to them, and they could do it. And there's like, there's nothing to this, and it was really encouraging. Our founder is his passion is building motorcycles from scratch. So he'll weld up the frame and get the motors, and he puts things together in a really creative way. But so he was going to be displaying one of his creations at this motorcycle show. Actually won, and so he said, "I'll just take the device along and we'll do some studies there." It was funny, but it really did show how easy the device was to use.
That is, to me, key. A blood pressure cuff. Anytime you have the ability to bring simplicity to the model, it's ultimately along the lines of what Steve Jobs was promoting. The consumer doesn't know what they want until they see it, and hence, who would have introduced the smartphone, right? Nobody was crying for it, but it came, and now it is where it is. And the same thing holds true with the reimagination of the delivery of care. No one thought X was possible. Virtual care was truly possible as being a viable platform and a viable delivery of care methodology. But yet, seemingly in today's day and age, with a combination of technology and expertise from the physicians, we are making things happen for sure.
Absolutely. For sure.
Yeah. So the Vitals 360 in a doctor's office, your ability to reduce the costs through improved efficiencies while eliminating transcription errors. Great. It's a great opportunity for, I can do X, Y, and Z, but then I got to write it down and go over to the EHR and type it in, right? And that's a recipe for errors. I'm sure you would agree.
And when I was in practice, you would see it all the time. Somebody would come in and they would weigh 250, and I'd look at their record, and last month they weighed 150. How could that be, right?
I have too many stories on. Yeah, I have too many stories on that front. Into the extent of, I just got interviewed by the nurse. A doctor comes in and says, "What happened in your last heart attack?" I was like, "I didn't have a last heart attack. Sorry." Wrong patient, doc. But no, that's a different story. And then remote patient monitoring, the ability to prevent readmissions, improve the results of chronic care illness. This is all about patient engagement, more frequency of measure. Have your wellness be top of mind, not an event that happens 15 hours in a given year. And ultimately, awareness of a condition raises the education of one's person, and ultimately, I believe that awareness creates the education. Education leads to behavioral change. Behavioral change leads to better engagement, and ultimately, that's the path of wellness. So, from awareness to wellness is ultimately, if a patient is not on the awareness to wellness continuum, the doctor will never get the value-based care.
No, I mean, the only way to save money in healthcare is to make people healthier. Everything else is just a gimmick. You got to make them healthier.
And in order to do that, patient has to decide what they eat, how they exercise, and what they do with their body. And I was on a call the other day, and there was a gal from grew up in, I believe it was Japan, and she said, food was medicine. That's how she was brought up. So she is a conscious effort as to understanding what's in your hand and what are you about to put in your mouth, ultimately to again, relative to the state of wellness.
In a study with a large health plan, where that it is called the Food is Medicine study, and they're going to provide meals for the patients, and if they have somebody else in the house, for the other person as well, and monitor the effectiveness of that.
We should talk more about that offline. I have some GenieMD is actually working on some of the things in that regard, so let's talk a little bit more offline on that front. But it's really exciting stuff. I absolutely agree. Just real quick, I would say, hey, I'm measuring my vitals. I am paying attention. Point is, I have access. I have tools. And part of my regimen is, and sometimes access is the inhibitor is cost. So for the needy in that context, so they're part of their challenge is buying the right food as well. It's not that they don't know where the supermarket is. It's whether or not they can get there. One, two, buy the right foods, and still pay the rent at the end of the day. So, Dr. Parks, we only have a couple minutes left. Tell me a little bit about what you see globally, if you will, from a Vocare perspective. We talk about value-based care a lot here in the U.S. I know Vocare is a global company. Tell us a little bit about some of the comparisons and what you see on the value-based care front and elsewhere.
Yeah, the non-domestic markets are already very much value-based. And the U.S. is just behind on that. We're still activity-based to some degree. And so we see a lot of interest without any outreach in the foreign markets. 2022 will be a huge year for us. We're going, and I've already started after our ISO 13485, which is the ISO standard for medical device manufacturer. We're getting our MDSAP, medical device single audit program. And we already are approved for sales in India. We're going to try to add Canada, Mexico, and Australia this year, and get clearance for our integrated glucose testing, a glucometer that we have as part of the device. So it's going to be a busy year for us. And at the same time, we're just starting to stand up sales. We've had devices for less than a month now. Manufactured devices, we had prototypes before, but we have manufactured devices now. We're putting in people's hands, and we've got 30 customers who are in various phases of adoption of the device. So it's an exciting time.
Awesome. Very well. So HIMSS is coming up mid-March. Vocare is going to be in the GenieMD booth. We're very excited about having you there. That booth, for those listening, is booth 4959. So if you're attending HIMSS, certainly feel free to stop by. I know Dr. Parks will be in the booth, and myself and overall in the GenieMD booth will be there. Would love to chat with you about this device, how it integrates with the GenieMD virtual care platform, and ultimately how it's all about partnerships. It's all about a collaboration. And again, we're very excited about having you join us at HIMSS. Any thoughts on what you're looking forward to at HIMSS, other than being in a great booth with your favorite partner?
Oh, that's enough joy right there. But I've not been to HIMSS before, which is odd because I've been in the IT space and healthcare for 30 years. So this will be my first trip, and I'm looking forward to it. It'll be like a little bit like Disneyland for me.
Yeah, and HIMSS can be very exciting. I've gone for many years actually. And the first time I went was in Chicago, when the last time they had it in Chicago, many moons ago. So I'm very excited. So our booth is right on the main corridor. You can't miss us. So it is again, as I said, booth 4959. Dr. Parks, I want to thank you for joining us on this radio program, Healthcare Now Radio, the virtual shift. And let's have you on again sometime soon. Talk more about what you're seeing in the market as you roll out the platform, and what type of feedback you're getting from the consumers and healthcare systems alike.
Okay, great, Tom. It's good seeing you.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Parks. I would like to thank the show sponsors, both HP and Intel. HP Engage long lifecycle products provide the stability, safety, and security you need, plus flexibility and performance designed for today and tomorrow. As well, Intel would like you to know we're going above and beyond together with new standards for business with the latest Intel vPro processors, delivering what IT needs for performance, security, remote manageability, and stability. And be sure to check out the program page on healthcarenowradio.com. And remember, connect or follow me on LinkedIn, Twitter at FoleyTom, and follow the show's hashtag, The Virtual Shift. I'm Tom Foley. Until the next shift.